Hello, welcome back to Mindset Manifesto. Today we're going to be talking about something that is pretty profound, pretty deep, and it's also been around for over 2,000 years, and it still feels very relevant. So if you have ever heard of Plato's Allegory of the Cave, it is one of those stories that once you really understand it, it can change the way you see everything, like yourself, your relationships, your beliefs, the whole world. So if you have felt stuck, like you're living in a life that's smaller than what you're capable of, or if you've had quite a nagging feeling that something just isn't quite right, but you can't put your finger on it, this episode is for you. I cannot remember the name of this strain. It's not going to focus, but putting this in the Puffco, and then we'll get into our allegory. But it's Sunday, so it's Sunday. I think this will come out on Sunday. Who knows? You may not be listening on a Sunday. Who knows? But while I do this, I'm going to share what I'm grateful for today. So I am grateful for 70-degree weather. And I am grateful for birds chirping in the morning. And I'm grateful for Sundays. Sundays are my favorite day. So I love Sundays. And I'm grateful for tea. There's lots of things to be grateful for. I got this new Snoopy mug. Super cute. Okay, so let's get into it. So, the cave. Let me walk you through the story first. You've lived your whole life inside a dark cave. You have been chained up in a way that forces you to only face one direction. So all you can see is the wall in front of you. And behind you, there's a fire. And between you and the fire, there's a short wall like puppeteers would use. And people are walking by with objects. But you can't turn around to see them. All you can see is the shadow from the objects that they are carrying flickering on the wall. Now, here's the kicker, because you've never really seen anything else, so you think that those shadows are reality. You're not aware that there's a fire behind you. You don't even know about the people walking around. To you, life is nothing but those shadows. They're the only truth that you know. Break. Okay, I want you to really sit with this for a moment. Think about how many things we take for granted. Oh, that was a good one. Because we've never known any different. Like your routines, your beliefs, the roles we play in our own lives, the roles that other people play in our lives. They can all feel really permanent and super real, but sometimes those are kind of just shadows, like in this story, the shadows in this story. So what if there's more to life, more to you than what you've been looking at or what you've only seen as your reality up until this point? So now in Plato's story, one of the prisoners breaks free, and imagine being that person. The first thing you feel is probably fear. You've lived in this dark cave your whole life, and now all of a sudden you're unchained and you can do what you want. You turn around, and for the first time in your life, you see the fire. The light burns your eyes. It's uncomfortable. It's overwhelming. You might even want to turn back to the shadows because at least it's familiar and comfortable and perceived as safe. And that's something that we all experience when we start waking up to a new reality. And Plato's Allegory of the Cave is what they used to kind of create the Matrix, if you've seen the Matrix. So the truth at first can be scary, it can be disorienting and isolating, but once you start seeing things for what they are, you can't see them how you used to see them anymore. You realize that what you thought was reality was just a small, distorted piece of the picture. And As this prisoner's eyes adjust, they start to understand that the shadows on the walls are just reflections of what was happening behind them, and they weren't actually the full reality or the full truth. And I would, if you want to imagine this in modern day terms, you could think of in the same situation if you were stuck in a movie theater and you were born in the movie theater, you grew up in the movie theater, all you knew was watching movies, and that's what you perceived. So let's say that you only watched horror or action movies. So your whole life you're perceiving as these movies as being the only reality, when actually there's a whole world outside that is probably a lot more mundane and peaceful than what you had been experiencing in the movies. So it'd be similar to that if it was a movie theater in modern day. And so they understand that what's on the walls are reflections and not actually reality, and not the full truth, maybe a piece of the truth, but not the full truth. And then the prisoner doesn't stop there just to turn around. The prisoner leaves the cave entirely. And so imagine stepping out of the cave into the sunlight. After living in darkness your whole life, you don't even probably know that the sun exists. And of course, the light is going to be really blinding, and you might even want to, again, turn back to the cave because it's so much more comfortable in the dark, and it's just obviously familiar. So, of course, like it does, your eyes slowly adjust and you start to see the world as it really is. And you see the actual trees, not just the shadows of the trees, the sky, other people, colors, things you couldn't even dream of when you were stuck in the shadows. So let's bring this back to us. I want you to ask yourself, what is your cave? Where in your life have you been chained to a limited perspective, believing that the shadows you see are all there is? Maybe it's in the way you think about yourself. Maybe you've been telling yourself stories like, this is just the way that I am, or I can't do any better than this, or this is what I deserve. Or maybe your cave is a relationship. This could be romantic or otherwise, that keeps you feeling small. A job that stifles your creativity, or even a belief system you inherited from someone else. Your family, your culture, or your past experiences. We all have caves. We all have shadows that we've been staring at for so long that we mistake them for reality. But here's the thing, that the cave is not all there is. And if you could break free from those chains, what would happen? What if things that feel so fixed and inevitable are just shadows on the wall in the cave? And what would happen if you turned around and saw the fire? If you walked out of the cave and into the light? So this comes around to facing the fear of change. And I know that it's scary. The idea of leaving the cave is terrifying, and sorry, I thought my cup was gonna fall. That prisoner probably didn't feel an instant relief when they turned around and saw the light, and I'm sure that they were really discombobulated, uncomfortable, doubtful, fearful, and you might be feeling that too. I know I definitely have felt that before when I'm trying to make a shift, or I'm at a place where I need to make a certain decision soon, and if not, that decision is going to be made for me. And maybe you're questioning something in your life, but the thought of change feels overwhelming, and maybe you've gotten used to the shadows, and the idea of stepping into the light does feel impossible, like these people who are chained to the wall. But let me ask you this. What is the cost of staying in the cave? And what are you missing out on by staying chained to those shadows that you perceive as reality? And of course, maybe it feels safer to stay where you are, but is that really where you want to be? And what possibilities are waiting for you outside of the cave if you were only brave enough to take a step out of the cave? And so, of course, breaking free isn't going to be something that happens all at once. It's definitely going to be a process. It's been a process, just like healing is a process. And when that prisoner first saw the fire, their eyes didn't adjust right away. They weren't comfortable right away. They had to probably blink, squint, and maybe even just close their eyes for a little while before they could actually handle opening their eyes to the light. And that's how personal growth works too. I think the first step towards change is often the hardest, just like admitting that you have a problem is often the hardest. It's uncomfortable and it kind of shakes up everything that you thought you knew, but with time and patience, you start to adjust and start to see the truth more clearly. And once you do, you can never go back to the way that things were. Maybe you can repeat some of the same actions, but you're going to feel a lot worse about it because now you know the truth of the reality you need to face. And it's a lot harder to lie to ourselves when we've already been honest with ourselves. And if you think about it in your own life, is there a moment where you started to see things differently, and what opened your eyes to in that moment, and a moment where you began questioning the shadows of your wall, so to speak, and what did it feel like? To me, I have had situations where my perception has been called out as being a little closed-minded, or maybe just a little dogmatic, I suppose. And whenever someone tells me something about myself and I know it's true, I kind of just feel dumbstruck for a moment and a little bit ashamed. And then when I realize that that person is right, then that's when I really start to reflect. And so to me, it does feel a little bit scary, but also feels really freeing, because now I know, like, this lesson has been learned. I can't repeat this cycle again because I've woken up to the truth. And if you haven't had a moment like that, what would it take for you to have it? What would have to change for you, or are you comfortable where you are? So how do we break free of our own caves? And I'm going to give you, let me think. Okay, I wrote these down. I'm going to give you guys 5 tips about how we can break free of our own cave, our metaphorical cave. So one thing is start noticing the shadows. So like the shadows in the story. What limiting beliefs are you holding on to? What stories have you been telling yourself about what is and is not possible for your life? And what patterns or habits have kept you chained in place? And I think some of those things, I'll just be transparent and share some of my thoughts of my own about this. But definitely for myself, I think I repeat the story to myself that I won't get something done or I won't stick with something. And so it really prevents me from trying. But that's just a story that I've told myself because I am not very patient with passion projects. And so I expect to see things right away, or I get discouraged or like scare myself out of it. And I think that I'm in a lot better place with this now, but I think there's always things that I can see about myself that kind of keep me in one place, and those are always coming and going for myself, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way. But I think overall, just notice those things in your life that kind of keep you in one place. It could be habits, it can be something else, and it could be people as well. So the tip number 2 is take small steps. So change doesn't have to be super drastic, and it could be a small shift in perspective, a new habit, or a conversation that challenges your usual way of thinking. And the question is, what's one small thing that you can do today that takes you out of your comfort zone, even if it's just a little bit? And that could mean listening to someone else's opinion and taking it in without any bias. And it could also be starting a new habit, like going for a walk every day to try to connect to yourself a little bit more, or meditating if you want to connect to yourself a little bit more. Just spending time with yourself. For me, that can be going for a walk, or even sometimes driving in the car, or working out. Any of those things. It can just be sitting in solitude. And I mean like actual idle time, not like I'm on my phone kind of thinking here and there. I mean like actual idle time. And just give yourself those moments to actually think and reflect. And I think all of us tend to try to stay busy, and I don't think that's very productive for anyone. So, number 3, lean into being uncomfortable. And remember that things are going to feel a little harsh at first, and that growth is uncomfortable, but staying the same comes at a far greater cost. And are you willing to be and feel uncomfortable to reach something greater than where you are? Because we can't just wait for something to fall in our laps and for things to happen to us. We have to take inspired action. And I know I've said that term in the podcast before, but it is an important thing that we can manifest and pray and whatever all we want. But if we're not taking steps towards that thing, then nothing's going to happen for us. And I think that something that I always like to remember is when you ask for blessings, you're just going to get more opportunity. And when you ask for growth, you're going to get more things that challenge you. And so they're not going to show up on a silver platter. I think that we kind of have to work for things in a sense. And that just means doing the internal work so that the external can be fruitful. And the 4th step is going to be to kind of that idea of birds of a feather flock together. You want to surround yourself with people who have also left the cave. And sometimes we need someone who's already walked out to show us the way. And so you can seek out mentors, friends, or if you don't really have that many people that you have access to, you can do books or podcasts or YouTube videos that challenge your perspective. And you could also ask yourself who in your life is already living in that light, and how can you learn from them or connect with them, or embody them if it's someone that you kind of observe from afar. But how can you change yourself to better align with those things that you admire about that person? And that doesn't have to be in like an idolizing way. Just if you want to carry a specific energy, how can you better embody that within yourself? And that's a question only you can answer. And then the last step is to trust the process. I think that we all kind of want instant gratification, and just like the prisoner's eyes took time to adjust, the journey out of the cave will also take time. So be patient with yourself, and it takes a while to fully integrate yourself and to be grounded and spiritually accelerating at the same time without feeling super detached from reality. Or circling back to a couple episodes ago about spiritual psychosis, if you're not grounded in your reality while you're integrating these new truths, it can definitely put you into a position where it's hard for you to understand any aspect of reality. And so that's where you have to maintain your grounding as much as you possibly can in those cases. So overall, I think that the Allegory of the Cave is more than just an ancient story. It's been the foundation for a lot of movie ideas, show ideas, and it's just a reminder of the power of perspective and the courage that it takes to break free of the limitations that we place on ourselves. And I want to leave you with a question of what is one shadow in your life that you've mistaken for reality, and what is one step you can take to move forward into the light, and to remember that the outside world outside of the cave essentially is waiting for you, and that oftentimes we have to pick our heart of Do I want to have the difficulty of remaining the same and being unhappy with it? Or do I want the difficulty of challenging myself to get to a place where I'm truly satisfied with who I am and what I have and what I'm doing with myself? And oftentimes it's much brighter and more beautiful than we could ever imagine if we actually allow ourselves to step into that space and energy instead of being afraid of what that could offer to us. But I just wanted to keep it kind of under 30 minutes today, so I am going to wrap up, but really just challenge your perspective, learn from people who are different than you, challenge what it actually means to be open-minded, not just what you think is open-mindedness, and truly be curious. And so thank you for joining me today. I hope that this episode gives you something to think about and, more importantly, act on. And until next time, stay curious and stay courageous and keep seeking the light.